everybody for inviting me. Thanks also everybody who's spared some time for this afternoon's session, which I think is really important. I think it's timely, and I'm personally a massive fan of coaching, both coaching as a formal point of support to colleagues, but also coaching as a tool that we can all use as leaders and managers as an expression of support to others, and indeed, yes, kindness. It's amongst many things which we'll hear about, means showing others that we care sufficiently about them to listen. And it has evidential benefits, and some of those are listed on this particular slide, and I won't read them out, but I think they provide a compelling basis on which we should all be not just curious about coaching and mentoring, but also pursue it. I've been invited to talk this afternoon, and my comments will be brief, as the chair of the ICS, the new body which will bring us together as organisations, teams, individuals within Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. But I'd also just to offer a brief insight from my other role. I have two roles. The other one is Senior Leadership Advisor for NHS England, which I carry out as a coach, a qualified coach. And at the moment, I provide support as a coach and mentor to some 35 to 40 colleagues across the Midlands, mainly colleagues in leadership roles. And my reflection is there's never been a time of change and challenge when coaching should be seen as a really, really important contribution to well-being, to self-awareness, and also to enhancing development and performance. So I'm looking forward to listening. I'll try and stay for as long as I can this afternoon. I'm sure we all have things we can learn, and I'm about to move from talk mode to listen mode, and to listen to Nazrin and Helen for what I'm sure will be a fantastically interesting few minutes. So at that point, can I bring my contribution to a close and pass the baton back to you both? Thank you.
Thank you, David. Really great for you to join us at the beginning of this session and set the scene so perfectly. And I couldn't agree more. I think coaching, I know that both myself and Nazrin are really biased. We are AD specialists, but we're also qualified coaches. And we absolutely believe that coaching is an essential way for us to build a compassionate workforce. So just kind of wanted to just add to David's words and give a few quotes from learned people, much more learned than myself, so that we can get our heads thinking about what coaching is and what coaching can be. So Carl Rogers says, "When I've been listened to and when I've been heard, I'm able to reperceive my world in a new way and to go on. It's astonishing how elements which seem insoluble become soluble when someone listens." Kingsfund, "Coaching can help us to find space. And that's where the coach and coachee work together in a journey of discovery about what could be. And neither assumes they know best, but both are committed to questioning and learning." And Stephen Covey says, "Be patient with yourself. Self-growth is tender, it's holy ground, and there's no greater investment." And for me, these three quotes kind of sum up what coaching is. I think, as David was saying, it's definitely about kindness, but it's about being listened to and being provided with some safe space where you can explore all opportunities. So we do want this session to be really interactive. So we've got both of us, myself and Nazrin, doing a bit of a double act. So one can talk and one can have their eye on the chat box. So if anybody would like to post some questions in the chat box or just share some thoughts about coaching, we'd be really, really keen to hear from you. So the essentials of coaching really lie in our ability to listen and create a really positive, trusting, compassionate relationship between the person who is providing the coaching environment. So in this instance, I'm not really talking about necessarily a coach in the formal sense of the word, but you all as workers in health and social care and as leaders. So it's about being attentive to the person that you're with and being able to ask open questions to get the person to kind of think more broadly and to be okay to probe, because by probing you're providing the person with an opportunity to think more deeply about the issue. I'm sure that you're all familiar with skills of paraphrasing and reflection and summarising. But when you do those things, you are not only providing clarity for yourself, but you're also showing the other person that you have really kind of listened to them and you're wanting to more deeply understand what they're talking through with you. So this slide kind of gives you a little bit of information about what coaching is and what coaching isn't. So coaching conversations are generally non-directive. They are very much about the you allowing the individual to take the lead, and you as the facilitator, you're kind of pulling from them what they want to work on, what their goal is going to be, and what options and opportunities that they have. If you're towards the bottom of this list on the slide in front of you, you're doing less coaching but a lot more kind of telling, so you're going from that non-directive through to a directive approach. And I appreciate that a lot of you will be leaders and managers in your job, so that you will actually have a lot of directing and telling and instructing and giving advice to do as part of your work. And I think there's a really important consideration to kind of have in your head when you're able to offer coaching conversations to the people that you work with, and when actually you have to be in a more kind of telling, instructive mode, if that makes sense. Nasreen, are there any questions or comments in the chat box at all?
I did, Lisa, I think it was Lisa Delvin that had her hand up earlier, and I did post something in the chat box just to see if Lisa did have a question for us, but nothing's come back, so I'll keep you posted on that.
All right. So a word on mentoring as well, because I think that the coaching and mentoring are often used interchangeably as words, and I know in UHL we did quite a bit of work on clarifying for our organisation what we meant by the two terms. And looking at the literature, mentoring is a lot more about teaching and providing advice. Oh, Lisa says that she hit the button by accident. That's absolutely fine. But we would like to hear from you, Lisa, if you do have anything you'd like to share. And the NHS Leadership Academy state that mentoring is different to coaching in terms of its intent. So you can see here in the blue box that we're talking much more about that teaching, the providing of advice, introductions, bringing people into different networks, being a critical friend, being somebody that you can learn skills from, and often people will maybe seek a mentor when they're in kind of a transition role, or they're wanting to move to the next level. And usually a mentor is seen as somebody who has more experience or more skills in the profession or service that the mentee is interested in developing in. So coaching conversations can be about anything. And just going back to what David was saying at the beginning, you know, it's hard in health and social care. It's, you know, it's wonderfully rewarding, and it's also tough and challenging. And we're all people, and we all need help with different things at different times in our lives. So I'm sure many of you can appreciate that, or have had experience of having conversations, whether it's about work-life balance or performance, could be around motivation, personal development issues. Sometimes that people have kind of relationship breakdowns at work. So there's lots going on where this kind of coaching conversation, we're going to give you an opportunity to try to have some coaching conversations very, very shortly. Whilst I'm still talking, I'm going to hand over to Nazrin soon, but when we go into some breakout rooms for the final part of the session, I do want you to have a little think about a conversation that you would like to have. So we're going to give you an opportunity to talk through an issue that you have at the moment. Using the GROW model. It's almost seamless, Nazrin. So the GROW model is, and for people, I don't know if there's anybody in the audience that is a qualified coach or has done any coaching training already, but the GROW model is a very, very popular coaching model, and actually it's a pretty easy one to try if you're new to it. So GROW stands for goal, reality, options and will. And I think really it can be summed up in those 4 questions, but Nazrin's going to provide a little bit of time to give more detail around each of the 4 sections and go into the breakout rooms. So goal, where you spend time asking the person what they would like to achieve. And remember, you're at the kind of the pull end of that conversation. So you're finding out what that person wants for themselves. The reality section, where you find out what's going on for that person right now. Options, you let them explore all the different possibilities available to them. And then will is about your will in terms of motivation to take that first step. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Nazrin, and then she'll take you through the next slides. I'll just keep moving them on when you tell me, Nazrin.
Okay. Thanks, Helen. And once again, thank you, David, as well. It was really good just to set the context. And like Helen said, I mean, there are, you know, if you are qualified coaches or you've heard a little bit about coaching, you will have no doubt have heard about the GROW model. And the GROW model is something that was developed by Sir John Whitmore in the 1980s with other colleagues. And, you know, he's written lots and lots of different books, but it started with Coaching for Performance, which he first published, I think it was in 1992. So many years ago, but it's a bit like Maslow, you know, it's a good one. It's a really great model. And what I love about it is that, like Helen said, it's simple, it's easy to use, and it's versatile. And it's one of those that you can actually incorporate, whether, you know, the coaching model, you can incorporate whether you're having an informal conversation with colleagues, you know, or it could be at a meeting, or it could be a sort of a project that you're working on. Some of the questions that you kind of focus on at each of the stages is really beneficial to help the conversations move forward and help you achieve the outcomes that you want. So the first stage of goal, as Helen of grow, is goal, and as Helen said, this is a really important stage, because the questions that we ask at this particular stage clarifies what the individual's thinking about, what they want to achieve, and what it helps them to do is really start to think about the path that they want to take to achieve their particular goal. And what you will notice is, as we go through the questions, you will find that these questions energize people. They provide that clarity of thinking. So when you start, when somebody comes to you, and things might be a little bit fuzzy when they first start the conversation and say, actually, I'd like a bit of coaching. What you will tend to find that if you ask people the questions, what would you like to get out of this conversation? Just by asking that simple question can sometimes really get people to focus on, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. Let me just kind of think about it. And it might take them some time to articulate what they want, but having some of these key questions, and this is not an exhaustive sample by no means, you'll find that there's lots and lots of different questions, but it really does help to get people to focus on what it is that they're trying to achieve. And like I said, it's a really important first phase that you explore with the individual that is requesting the coaching. So there's some other questions, and I'm not going to go through every single one, but simply by asking, what would you like to accomplish? What do you want to change? What you may find sometimes at this particular stage is that people do get stuck. You might find that we also get stuck, when we're in meetings, we kind of go through the same things over and over again. So sometimes just actually taking a step back and asking ourselves, what do we really want? What do we really want can really help the person sort of almost start to unpick what that might look like for them. So remember that the first step is getting people to really start to think about the future, what it is that they're trying to achieve. And that starts with the goal that they have in mind. Next slide, please. So the reality stage is a great opportunity for you coaching somebody to start really exploring the world that they find themselves in. So it's about finding out about what's happening for them right now through their lens, in their world, and how does that impact on themselves, but how does that impact on others as well? So the more that questions that you ask them at this particular phase, the more open questions, and like Helen said at the beginning, in terms of your toolkit, you've got the framework, but you've also got your own skill sets, which is about the listening. So what you will probably do is start thinking about, well, let me ask a question. What is happening for you right now? How often, who might be able to help you? And then you might start actually asking a little bit more supplementary questions where you can start digging a little bit further and say, well, okay, in your reality, who might be able to support you to achieve this goal? What have you learned from the past? So there's lots of different types of questions that you can use to explore the reality. Typically, for those of you that have never done coaching before, what you find is that you spend a lot of time going through the goal and the reality phase of coaching. And it's with good reason, because often we find ourselves in situations where we don't have a very clear goal in mind, or the goal that we think we had in mind may change for us as we explore our current reality. And that is brilliant, because this is where we get the distinction between coaching, between having a normal conversation and coaching. For me, that's what makes the distinction, because you're actually giving an individual the opportunity to have further insights and reflections in terms of what is happening around them. And then naturally, next slide, please, Helen, what happens is that people start exploring options, and you will find that people tend to get really energized at this stage, because what you've done, you've paved the way for them to see a little bit clearly. So maybe perhaps the lens was a little bit foggy to start with. So what you've done, you've polished it for them, you've helped them do that. So by doing that, you can start asking people to explore that. So what alternatives do you have? What's worked in the past? And that's not almost sort of getting people to kind of almost, get stuck in the past. It's really about getting them to kind of almost think about the past, but in the new setting, in the new arena that they now find themselves in, because they understand their situation with greater clarity and understanding in terms of what they want to achieve. Who could help you with this is a simple question, but a great one, because sometimes we think that we're actually on our own when we're doing this, but really we've got a lot of other people and a lot of support to do this. So I think some of those questions are really great to kind of explore and then expand on as you progress the conversation. So next slide, please, Helen. This for me is one of the difficult areas, because it's the commitment. That's what we're trying to explore, when we go through the questions, that when we look at will, it's how are you going to go about it? What do you think you need? And when are you going to get started? So you're starting getting people to kind of think about that commitment, on a scale of 1 to 10, where is your plan now? When you start doing that, it actually gets people to feel a little bit, I suppose, get them to think about, well, this is a little bit harder than I thought. And what they might do is really start thinking about the goal that they had in mind in the first place. And it's really important, as Sir John Whitmore says, that what we don't do when we have these conversations, because remember what we started off with, we're human, show kindness. You may feel that you've spent a lot of time with somebody exploring the goals in reality, and then when it comes to the commitment, you find that actually the goal that they had in mind wasn't the one that they intended. It's something else. So you may want to go back to the goal. And I'm just sharing that with you because it is a typical scenario that you may find yourselves in. So we don't dogmatically, sequentially go through all of the 4 stages. We may need to revisit some, but it's about asking insightful questions and connecting with the individual and showing that compassion and kindness that we've already talked about, that Helen and both David has mentioned. So I'm going to hand the next slide. Let's just have a look at that, Helen. Right, I'm going to hand over to Helen, who's going to go through the exercise with you. Now, although I haven't covered all of the questions, there is a handout and a picture that you can take that's got all the questions on it before you go into this exercise. So over to you, Helen.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm going to put this slide up in a minute so you can take a photograph of that slide before you go into your breakout rooms and have a live coaching conversation. My trusted friend and colleague Mariam is going to put you into breakout rooms in a couple of minutes in groups of 3. So person 1 would like you to choose an issue that's important to you at the moment and you feel happy to talk about and you feel would be useful to you to have a coaching conversation this afternoon. And person 2 is going to have a go using the 4 steps of the GROW model by leading and facilitating that conversation. So person 2 will kind of go through, as Nazrin has beautifully described, the GROW kind of questioning format. And we want person 3 to observe and support person 2. So if person 2 needs a little bit of help potentially around thinking of questions, or the observer thinks actually this will be a really good reality question to ask, you can kind of support and add in your questions, and then also to provide any kind of tips and feedback during the exercise. So we're going to have about 15 minutes, 20 minutes in the breakout room. So if you have time, then definitely swap around so that more of you can have a go at coaching and being coached. But when we come back, then we'd like to just hear from you. We want to hear how you've got on, and we'll answer any questions and talk about what that felt like. So without further ado, Mariam, if you can start to allocate people into breakout rooms. This slide here, if people would like to take a photo, has got about 10 questions for each of the GROW sections, which will be really useful. Welcome back, everybody. So we've got about 10-15 minutes left, and we would like to have just a little bit of discussion and feedback from you. So if anybody would like to share how that felt, having a coaching conversation, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. Oh, so I can't see who's got their hand up.
Me.
Yeah.
Julie.
I'm Julie Warner from Leicestershire Partnership NHS Trust, and I was paired up with Tara from Loros, who's waving. Hi. It was a really lovely opportunity to meet you, Tara. That was wonderful for me. And I've practiced the GROW model on Tara. And we had a lovely time. We came up with, it was a bit rushed towards the end, isn't it always? You just get to the juicy bit and whoosh, you're beamed up again. But we came up with 3 options that Tara is well motivated, 10 out of 10 to push forward.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Julie, can I ask you, was that the first time you'd used the GROW model?
No. No.
That's why she was very good at it.
I've got a hidden agenda. Me and my colleague Elena Relf are going to be rolling out some teaching on coaching within Leicestershire Partnership NHS Trust. So we thought we'd better come along and gather some more good ideas.
Get some intel.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate your honesty. Thank you.
Lovely to hear from you, and it sounds as if you were very accomplished in your coaching conversation. Thank you very much. And how did that feel, being on the receiving end of that kind of coaching?
Yeah, it was good because it gave you that opportunity to think about the hows, the whys, and what you were going to do to take things forward. And I think actually Julie was great because she guided me through those questions. I think it's very easy to say to someone, what's your objectives and what are you going to achieve, without actually delving into those deep and meaningful questions of how, why, how you're going to evaluate that, what you're going to do to move it forward. And I think that's really helpful to sit back and make those considerations.
It's that listening at the deeper level and really providing that kind of psychological space, isn't it, that provides the power, I think. Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Tell us how you got on. Does nobody else want to share? It is the end of the day, I suppose.
Great use of silence there.
I know. Well, I was doing my little counts. Okay, so I hope that that you all found some value in having a go with the GROW model there, and I was thinking as well that oh gosh, I've forgotten. It's Julie and the other lady that you were paired up with.
Tara.
Tara, that's right. You know, you said it was a bit rushed at the end, but you know, these events are how you kind of make connections with people, and there's nothing stopping the two of you having another mutually kind of facilitative coaching conversation outside of this event if you wanted to. Thank you so much for sharing. So the other thing that I wanted to say whilst we're on this slide actually is that we are going to send the slide deck out to people so that you have access to that. But if you are new to GROW, then you know you can have that printed out on your desk or on your wall just to kind of remind you of some of the good coaching questions that you can ask. Top tip. So finally, before we end the session, within Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland, we have a lot of trained coaches across our organisation. So there's kind of more than 40, I think there's probably nearer to 50 trained coaches that we're aware of in LLR at the moment. So if anybody out there is interested in accessing some formal coaching, the way to do that would be to contact via the LLR Academy. And then they will forward on to ourselves, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction of a coach. Alternatively, the NHS Midlands Leadership Academy has a database, CoachNet database, which lists up all trained coaches that are registered on there from across the whole of the Midlands region, and you can have online coaching there. And anybody can access that. And so, you know, there's a beauty there in being able to access coaching from outside of LLR. If you wanted to have kind of, you know, a really kind of different perspective from outside of your health and care system. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Nazrin, before we close the session?
What I was going to say is, you know, don't be afraid of trying out the GROW model. You know, if it's something that you're not familiar with, have a go. Sometimes people won't even know that you're actually trying, you know, some of the coaching tools with them. And I think it's really great when you can actually see that a different approach. You know, sometimes when we're under so much pressure, it's so much easier just to tell people what to do. But just using some of the coaching, you know, the model itself, and opening up the dialogue for people to think for themselves really will pay dividends in the long run, because it empowers people. So, you know, just bear that in mind, and yeah, give it a go. I mean, the kids are always telling me off because they think, Mum, you're doing that thing again. Just tell us what we need to do. So that would be my advice to you.
Top tip. And if there are any trained coaches in the audience, myself and Jackie Mann from Leicester Partnership Trust are joining forces and running a CPD event on the 30th of November in the afternoon. So there'll be some content there, so an opportunity to look at some issues, and also an opportunity for some peer supervision within the group, use of breakout rooms again. Okay, so any questions before we end the session? Or any thoughts?
One comment, it really does improve the energy in the room when you are doing a bit of coaching. I found that with Tara just towards the end. It felt like we really wanted to carry on with the conversation, so there was an energy there.
Yes, fantastic, thank you, really appreciate that. And Charlotte, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask, is there any opportunity to, like, the LLR Academy offer any kind of coaching training at all?
Coaching training. Well, I think you've just heard from Julia. It sounds as if Leicester Partnership Trust are going to be doing some training. I don't know whether that's coaching in general or the GROW model. Myself and Nazrin will be putting on some sessions across the system around coaching skills development for leaders. The Midlands Leadership Academy as well, the link was on the previous slide, and I'm sure Mariam or Nazrin can put the website into the chat box. Actually, they offer quite a lot of sessions around coaching skills as well. So that's something to look out for. Is there anything else, Nazrin, in respect of coaching training?
No, I think that's it at the moment. So watch this space. And what we tend to do is we will, you know, advertise. We tend to do things on Eventbrite where you can book on, but we will, you know, let you all know when new things come up, certainly for what we're doing here for the Academy.
Thank you. Any other thoughts and questions? We've got a couple of minutes. Oh, thank you. So Jem or Mariam have put the Midlands Leadership Academy into the chat box. Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. really great to meet people.